Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela. But you know what I like to do on the show? I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today, we want to get you fired up about your pets. That's right. So today, we want you to let your dogs and cats join in the conversation. So everyone, get comfy, get cozy with your pets today, because I am talking with Ross Gilbert about his book, Pet Peeves. So go on, get your coffee, get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Ross. Thank you so much for joining me on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you.
Absolutely. Now, I can't wait to talk to you about your book. But as is the fashion here on the show, we give you a few minutes to introduce yourself to perhaps those one or two people out there listening that are unfamiliar with you or with your work. So here goes. Ross, who is Ross? What makes you you?
Well, I'm a family man. I've got 3 adult sons that are doing well with themselves, so kudos to me, I guess. I'm a retired aircraft engineer. I worked for the Boeing company for 35 years, and I'm enjoying retirement. Spending time with my sons and my grandkids.
Absolutely. And I know how important companies like that are. I grew up originally in the state of Virginia, and having those major contractors that can assist with either shipbuilding or with NASA, it's amazing to have that partnership, and it really is a beautiful thing. So thank you for your hard work and all that you do as well. Now, being an author, is that something that you always wanted to do, or did you find that was just like your next thing on this journey called life?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people want to write the next great novel, but that was never a goal of mine. I just I've always liked some of the quirks of the English language, like homonyms, where one word can be perceived as more than one thing, like chest and chest, or live and live, and scales and scales. All those words with like if you read the word, you don't know for sure, is it a state fair or is it just sound fair? And that sort of morphed into thinking about other cases where similar oddities occur. And since I've had dogs for most of my life, I got to thinking how or other pets might perceive things differently than humans. And the ideas kind of grew from there. Then when I retired, I started compiling my thoughts and putting the book together.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
And I love it. No, you're fine. I love it when people present something that makes you kind of challenge the way that we've always thought about something. It's like expand your thought process just a little bit and imagine. And I think that you're almost going in the same vein as when we watch the kids' movies. And, the dogs and stuff and the cats and the birds and whatnot, they're all talking and interacting with each other, and they have their own little world in society outside of their humans. So I can see how you definitely... Yeah. I can see how you definitely came up with that concept. So I love it. And I like those kind of movies. I think they're hilarious. So I definitely love that. Now, the title... The title of your book, I want to make sure that people understand, it is Pet Peeves. So just in case your pets might have some pet peeves, the same way that we as humans have pet peeves. Did that develop out of your writing, actually coming up with the title? How did you decide, yep, this is what I'm going to entitle the book?
It kind of started with the title, actually. I heard an expression the other day that dogs will give you countless days of joy followed by heartbreak, and that's true of all pets, I guess. That you're going to enjoy them and they're going to be a companion to you, and then they don't live as long as we do, and then there's sadness. So I thought, well, there must be other ways that animals feel, because I know my dog, whenever I come home, whether it's 5 minutes to run to the store or 5 hours, she's always right there at the door wagging her tail, thinking it's the greatest thing in the world that I'm home, so they're good companions, especially these days when we're home more.
Yeah. You are so right. And I've often thought, I wonder what my dog is thinking at this moment. And I think that anyone who has a pet, you had that moment where you look at your fur baby there and you go, I think I'm getting on his nerves. I think she wants me to put her down or whatever, and it's like, because they have those expressions the same way we do. So I definitely get it. Now, how would you describe your book? Is it the type of book that we should read it from cover to cover? Can we pick it up and read it anywhere? How would you describe that?
Yeah, it's just each page is a separate little tale, I guess you'd say. It's a beautiful illustration from a local artist that I found, Scott Ward. He originally I had pulled photos off the internet to relay the thought of the pet peeve, and being an amateur first book person, the publisher said, "Oh, well, you need permission from whoever took the photo." Well, that was going to be hard to try to keep that down. So I went to my local bookstore and examined some of the books in stock and found a couple that Scott had illustrated and just really liked his illustrations. So we got together and he actually really did a good job and changed a few of them for the better. So I was happy that we could get together, and want to do a shout out to him for his good work. But yeah, it's each page is just a pet peeve with a cute little illustration of how your pet might be peeved about something, basically.
Like, I've often wondered if our dogs could actually talk to us. How do they feel about the little doggy booties that you put on their feet? Like, do they appreciate the fact that they have on little shoes, or would they prefer to just go ahead and tramp through the snow without the boots on? But they love us so much that they kind of put up with whatever we do. Of course, those loving things, not anything that would be, going too far in any direction, but just those little quirky things that we do. Do they like the coats that we put on them, or would they prefer to just have their own little doggy coats? So I definitely understand what you're saying there. Now, there are many funny moments that you have included in the book. Are they somehow based from any real life experiences, personally, with friends, anything like that? Or how did you come about that?
Well, I think everybody has pet peeves. I had a few, but then I also did a little Google search for, common pet peeves and came up with a few more. I actually had about twice as many when I started out, and between the publisher and Scott and myself, we decided that this was a good number to start with.
Now, the pet peeves that you decided to include, would you say that they are common pet peeves? Like, most people may say, well, I hate really, really, loud music in the middle of the night because it's disrespectful. Or you might have a pet peeve of people that are low talkers, they almost whisper when they talk. And it's like, speak up. people have some comments or ones that people can kind of understand how they came about. Do you find that you've included some pet peeves that most people would get, or do you think that they're a little different because they're coming from our pets?
Well, they say pets kind of take on the personality of their owners and vice versa. So my assumption is my dog's going to think the same way about stuff as I do. That's generalization, but yeah, I mean, most of them kind of annoy me too. So it's kind of experience.
Right. Gotcha.
Not my dog, but pet peeves. So it's kind of my experience, and then I did get a few doing my internet search of common pet peeves. So I don't know. My thinking is anyone should recognize them if they read the book, and probably agree with most of them.
Right. I love it. Now, who do you think the book is perhaps the most targeted? I know many times when authors are writing, they have a particular reader in mind, be it that it's young people like our teenagers or young adults, or it's someone who's a little bit more mature or have perhaps even studied a particular a particular field, and it goes a little deeper for folks in that area. Who is the ideal reader of your book, in your opinion?
Pretty much anybody that has a sense of humor should enjoy it. Typically, people see it as a children's book because of the layout and the cute illustrations of a pet. Then with the caption imagining what the pet's pet peeve might be. But I think that should appeal to most all readers. It's not really just a children's book. It's kind of for everybody that wants to chuckle a little bit.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with a good laugh. I hear you on that. Well, Ross, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you please remind everyone of the title of your book? Where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Again, it's Pets, the Possessive Pets Pet Peeves, and it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and I'm on Facebook, Ross Gilbert.
Alrighty, listeners, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Ross Gilbert, and we're talking about his book, Pet Peeves. I love it. Well, Ross, my next question for you is, with everything that's going on today, I'm asking people more and more, how is your book relevant? And even though a book could have been written 2 years ago or even 6 months ago, it is definitely relevant in the world of COVID-19. We're still dealing with the pandemic, not just here in the States, but around the world. How does your book help kind of bring a little bit of joy or peace or relevancy to what's going on today?
Well, I believe the expression that laughter is the best medicine, and you can certainly use some laughter today. For me, I assume most of us, things can happen in our lives in the moment that affect our day, good or bad. For me, many of my negative events happen during my commute to work, just defensive driving and all, like somebody failing to use a turn signal or cutting in front of you when there's blocks of free space behind you and then immediately slowing down to turn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are pretty severe pet peeves. It's like no one else in the world matters. And now with the battle about masks, that's kind of the same thing. No one else in the world matters. I'm not going to wear a mask. So blowing off some steam about something that really should be nothing in the grand scheme of things feels a little better. It's important enough to irritate us, but not really important enough to make a difference in our life or to affect someone else's life. Now with social media in so many forms and so popular, people can keep to themselves and silently see that the things that bother them, or they can try to inform people. Or if you keep to yourself, there's so much anonymous griping on social media about other people's faults, and calling them out. And I don't see a value there for either person. Maybe the person that is doing the taunting feels better about themselves, but it's not a good thing in my opinion. So pet peeves can actually serve a purpose. They do for me. Again, it's an irritating thing that allows us to generally rant about something that doesn't matter without ruining someone else's day. So if you embrace your pet peeves, but don't let them growl to anyone else, and like a pet, they can be enormously therapeutic.
You are so right. There's someone nodding their head right now saying, yep, he named some good pet peeves there, because there's a lot of that going on, and you're right, with the whole pandemic, you would think that perhaps people would be a little calmer, but I think that it has actually caused many people to, their anxiety has actually come to the forefront, and it's caused there to be a little more angst in the world. You are definitely right about that. So, Ross, I want to kind of shift gears just a little bit, and one of the things that I really like to do is ask questions of my authors for folks out there that are aspiring authors. So with that being said, when you were writing, did you find that you needed to be like away from the hustle and bustle of everything that was going on? Like, did you need a quiet space, or did you prefer to be kind of near people or have some type of white noise in the background?
I kind of just did it when, like, sometimes I do it on breaks at work or at lunch at work. But yeah, pretty much private time. I was the healthcare provider to my wife shortly after I retired, so I was kind of always on call for her needs, but I still found time to piece it all together and, contact the publisher and the illustrator and, get it all put together. I kind of have how do I say it? A need to finish what I start, basically. So once I got it in my head that I wanted to do it, I just kind of kept at it till I got a result that I liked.
I can definitely understand that. Now, you did you had a relationship with an illustrator, and for many people, it's just, I just need someone to do the cover, and it's kind of in and out. I want a rainbow or a park or a picture of me and some words, and it's really simple. But with you choosing to go the route of using an illustrator, did you find that there were any pros and cons to that, having to describe what was in your mind's eye and have someone sketch that out, and how do you make sure that you're both on the same page? How does that relationship work?
Well, we met at a coffee shop, and I showed him my draft with all of the photographs. So he just kind of had to translate those photographs into his vision of them as an illustration. And once he got them done, he sent them to me, and we talked on the phone about, well, why don't we do this? And he had good ideas, and I had good ideas. So it was pretty collaborative, and it worked out fine. Because like I say, he had illustrated several books before. It wasn't his first rodeo.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that was helpful too, because he had some experience with it all, and it wasn't like there were two newbies trying to do it. So I can definitely understand that. Now, when you have gone through the entire process, you have written, you've illustrated, and you now hold a copy of your book in your hand. How did that moment feel for you?
Well, it was a culmination of an idea that took a lot of work, and it's pretty cool to see the cover with my name and Scott's name on there, and sit there and go through it and say, hey, this turned out pretty well. So yeah, it's like a great accomplishment coming to the light.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And I like asking that question. And it's a question that I ask of everyone who's on, because I think it helps people that are going through the process. When we tell people, trust the process, and it's like, yeah, I see that as a meme. You guys say that, but what does it really mean? And I think when they have that moment, when they themselves finally hold a copy of their book in their hands, it's kind of that aha moment or that epiphany. It's like, oh, this is what they were talking about, that it is an amazing feeling to see all of your hard work and your collaborative effort right there in front of you. Now, for many authors,
that's a great term, aha moment. That's a great term for it.
For so many authors, once they've written one story or one book, they're like, I don't want to do this ever again. I'm glad that I did it, but it's not something that I want to keep doing. I just had that one off of that one book. Others may say something like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine a life without writing now. Who knew that I wanted to do this? Where do you think you stand? Do you want to write more books, or do you think that you're happy with just this project?
Well, I'm happy with how it turned out, and I'm kind of always, I don't plan to write another book, but I'm always thinking, ooh, that might be a good book to write. I'll see something there. So it's possible I might write another one, but it's nothing in work right now.
Right. I like that. I like that answer. It's like, it's not something I'm planning on, but I'm also open to a good opportunity. I like that. I think more people should take that stance. When you definitively cut yourself off from something, you may be robbing yourself of a life-changing experience, or you're doing it and stepping into it again might actually have such a positive effect on someone else that it can be life-changing for them. So you never know how that's going to work out. You are so right about that. Now, just a few more questions for you before I let you go, and thank you again for spending time with me. And that is the overall message. I know that many authors, when they're writing, they want to make sure that their readers have a takeaway from the book, that be it that it's hope or freedom or live your life or learning how to just let go. What do you want to make sure that the readers of your book take away from having purchased?
Well, Dr. Angela, I mentioned that things can happen in our lives in the moment, which can affect our day, good or bad. And for me, negative events only increase the stress in our difficult social times. So if you acknowledge a few bad occurrences or pet peeves as less than the huge pain in the butt that we might think they are at the time, and picture an example in the book, I hope that can serve as a way to relieve some stress. Like if someone's tailgating you, you can think about the cute dogs following each other real closely in the picture and hopefully make it less annoying. At least I hope that it would. Also, I read to my sons every night at bedtime. It was a great bonding moment between us, and it helped calm them down and help them get to sleep. So I also think this could help them. It also helped them become excellent readers and students. And like I said, this wasn't specifically a children's book. And in this instance, adults can see these selected pet peeves in a humorous way that aren't meant to try to switch your thoughts or give you soothing moments instead of stressing over them. And this can happen in real life. Like, the kids might have their own pet peeves that they've never talked about. And that would be a good thing too, is, as parents, you see, oh, well, I didn't know that bugged them so much, but they can kind of work through maybe some of the worries of their children by bringing this topic to light. Like picturing the cute cat driving and talking on the cell phone next to you instead of the actual person that's doing it, you know. Just hope to get, just hope to let people see, well, maybe it's not that awful. Just kind of think about it in a better light and have a better day, you know.
Absolutely. I love that because now is as good as any to share some positive vibes around the world. I have to agree with you on that. Well, Ross Gilbert, I have enjoyed my time with you here today, and I love that you have kind of challenged us just a little to think differently and to think outside of the box, and I love that. Before I let you go, can you remind everyone one last time, what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes, it's called Pets Pet Peeves, and it's on Amazon right now, and it's being republished, so it's going to get to maybe your local bookstore, but for sure Barnes & Noble and the larger bookstores out there. And I'm on Facebook as Ross Gilbert.
I love it. Ross, thank you again for being on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Angela. It was great. Have a good day.
You as well. And listeners, we want to, of course, wish you a happy day as well. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, I hope may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember, you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to inspire, enlighten, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about the book Glimpses. Now I Can See. Its author is Elizabeth Roberts. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee, or get your tea. She is about to share her memoirs with us. Good morning, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Well, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Ray Miller has told me lots about you, and I am pleased to be here today.
Awesome. Now, we are going to talk about your book in just a moment, but first I want to ask you some questions that will introduce you to those one or two people out there that may be unfamiliar with you or with your work. So the first question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what makes you you? What do you think has formed or fashioned you into the person that you are today?
Oh, dear. Let me see. To make me into the person I am today, I suppose it started when I was very small. A little kid on a ranch, and living on a ranch had certain advantages. I suppose sometimes when I would get on the school bus at the end of the day and be heading home, I thought, gee, I wish I could live in town and play with the girls that I knew. Well, no, I had to get on the bus to go home. And I would say from there was a certain work ethic, although that sounds sort of stuffy. But we learned very early to care for others. And those others were to feed and care for our cattle, our sheep, horses, dogs, cats, and even a donkey. And this happened before we ever had breakfast and before we ever had our evening dinner. And I think at some point I learned also that I had to do things for myself. In other words, I couldn't always rely on somebody to be there. One example, very briefly, is that I was probably 9 years old, and I had to move a bale of hay into the corral. And my father was there, and I said, Daddy, come on, help me, help me. He says, no, I'm going to be gone in a minute. You have to do that yourself. Well, this is a 100-pound bale of hay, and I probably didn't weigh much more than it. But you had to do it, and I made it, and it's kind of one of those things that gave you a responsibility. So that's probably a little more than you need. That's me as a kid. And then that whole thing followed through, I think, all my life.
But I tell you, the things that we learn as children really and truly do help build a great foundation to who we're going to be as adults. So I think you had a great beginning there. Now, being an author, not about your book, but just being an author, is that something that you always wanted to do, or did you find that it was just simply the right time?
No, I don't think I thought about being an author. As a grade school person, particularly, I would say sixth grade particularly, I wanted to be a physician. Really wanted to be, and I was so familiar with it, I wanted to be an internist. I had a wonderful physician who cared for me when I had rheumatic fever as a sixth grade. And anyway, I just thought so much of the people in the hospital. I was there for a couple months, and that they were so neat, and I liked the whole issue of it. And they would bring me books to read and this, that, and the other. But the whole time that I was in school, I loved books, and I loved to read. And sometimes it got me in trouble because I wasn't doing my work, but it was a delightful time. I think I fell in love with words is really what happened. It's sort of then it was better than I just got distracted a moment. It was better than Dick and Jane and Spot the dog. So things had become more descriptive. I just thought that perhaps that's one thing I could do. Now, I kept thinking about being a physician all the way through high school, even though I read widely of all kinds of things. But I think it was the love of words, and I still like that. Although I find sometimes I don't remember the one I really want. But there's an incident when I was in sixth grade, the latter part of sixth grade. I was in a spelling bee competition, and it included students from the eighth grade. Now, we were intimidated as we could be by the one who had won every year. And she was a delightful person, but oh my, did she know she had won. And I ended up being matched with her for the last word. And I always remember that because the judge asked, well, how do you spell the word key? And she sort of looked at the judge and she said, well, K-E-Y. And it was wrong. And I thought, oh my goodness sakes. And they turned to me and said, can you spell the word key? I said, well, it's probably part of the pronunciation, but it's Q-U-E. And I explained it. I said, well, that's a line of people getting ready to go on a bus in Britain. And I said, it could also be Q-U-A-Y, which is the area where a ship can dock. Well, I won the tournament. and then it went on to the advanced one. I didn't do well there, but there's certain words that sort of baffled me, and to this day they do. I lost the district tournament by not being able to spell the word opossum. To this day, I think I spell it incorrectly, but I believe it's O-P-O-S-S-U-M. So somewhere, I think I put too many S's or too many P's in it. But that's a little bit about the words. And I love them. I love using words. And sometimes they sound a little pretentious, but that's the word. And as I wrote, that was the thing that helped, was words that just came at the right moment.
Absolutely. I love that story because I think that if we're all honest, there are certain words that get all of us. People have an issue with the word vacuum. It's like, is it double T's? Is it double U's? Is it double M's? And then there's words that we type so much nowadays, but that's when we used to handwrite everything. Words would kind of switch up on you if you had written that word too many times. And people would say, well, now the word looks funny. Is it spelled right?
That's it, yeah.
So, I can definitely understand that. That's something that, our young people of today don't really have to deal with as much. But when you were writing things, it really did take a toll on you back in the day.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. Well, I think I find even for me, if I'm using my iPhone and it corrects words, or at least it puts the option there, it's sort of, no, wait a minute, did I spell that right? And I've wondered, though, if young students or younger people using an iPhone or a similar instrument could spell as well as we learn to spell. Because if they think of a word, they kind of type it in, what they think it sounds like, and hear spelling. And I think that's absolutely fascinating, but I wonder if they ever learned how to really spell it out phonetically and all that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I did read an article one day that said that thanks to our technology is that we are depending on technology for those little bobbles, those little correction things that we need to learn along the way. And in its own way, it helps us, but in its own way, it also does hurt us. Because I remember those little jingles or those little helps that our teachers would give us to help us learn how to spell things a certain way. Now, if you're from the South, be it that you were in school or your parents, they taught you how to spell the state Mississippi a certain way, and it kind of helped you to learn how to spell it. It was cute. It stuck in your memory, and you learned how to spell it. However, Pennsylvania or Connecticut or Massachusetts, God bless them, they don't have a jingle. So people kind of tend to mess up the spelling on those a little bit more. So you're definitely right. Now, the title of your book, Glimpses, Now I Can See. I like the title. It kind of has a little bit of mystery there, but it kind of alludes that you are going to tell us what is it that you have seen. How did you come about such an intriguing title?
How did I get the title, you're asking?
Yes.
Well, I think, if I recall, now this is sort of strange to say this, I'm not sure, but I was with a group of people, and we were talking about what we wanted to do in this, this, that, and the other. And I said something about, well, I've written, several things, selections, stories, if you want to call them that. I said, I guess I just like to do that. And they said, well, why don't you put them together in a book? And I thought, well, not really. I don't think I can do that. And then I began to think about it, and I thought, well, yes. And so another time, the same people were together, and they said, well, have you written your book? I said, did you get off the topic of my book? I said, well, honestly, I said, I have thought of a title. And I said, what's that? And I said, well, the idea is that I can see now. And then I said, well, wait a minute. I said, what I would write are just selections from my life about people I know, events, and so forth. And they would be like glimpses. Here's a picture here, here's a picture there. And so that's the way it turned out. The selections in the book are really glimpses. Here's a picture on this incident or area of my life. And that's how it got put together. It's not chronological, as many memoirs are. I would joke with people and say, well, many memoirs are written chronologically. I was born, I lived, I died. And I said, I have a little trouble with the last one. Not sure how you write that. but it always was a little humorous. But so I put all these selections together and grouped them according to interest or what they might be. And I think someone reading the book would really get that idea that, okay, here we have one called An Early Place, or one of those titles, or The Middle Place, I think it was. And those were all stories that related to, well, teenage years and a little older than that. Students I'd known and things like that. And it really, I don't know, it was a challenge to put all of that together. But I never thought I would ever write a book.
Well, Ms. Elizabeth, it's time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone of the title of your book and where they can pick up a copy?
Oh, sure. Well, the title is Glimpses, Now I Can See. And we'll explain that a little bit later, but you can get it through Abbott Press, the one that actually print the book, and it's printed on demand, so whatever they get an order for, they print. Or probably the best thing is to go to Amazon. Easiest to get, and price-wise, it's pretty good. I keep thinking about the price was not set by me, but I keep thinking, well, maybe I could make a bargain with the publishing company and with Amazon and say, how about we run it as a special and drop the price? I don't know if anyone has ever done that with one of their books, but anyway, all that by way of saying Amazon is probably the place I would go to get the book.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not a problem. Well, listeners, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Elizabeth Roberts, and we're talking about her book, Glimpses, Now I Can See. So my next question for you is, how did your early experiences on the ranch influence the life that you lead today? Do you think that all of that that independent hard work has still taken you where you need to go?
I think it did. I think as a kid on a ranch, there was sort of an independence. There was a time when you learned to take care of things, obligations that you had to fulfill. It was rewarding, too, in many ways, because you became attached to certain animals that became yours. And in calling them yours, you had an obligation to take care of them. So it was a little lamb, for example, that we saved from dying. Little infant thing that was just, its mother had rejected it, and poor thing was just not going to make it. So I write of that selection in the book, and it's called, I can't remember the name of that, terrible. Anyway, it's all in the name. And it was so funny because the thing was dying. And we had tried, strong tea, milk. It couldn't accept it. And the mother had an idea. And so she got into a cupboard where the medicine for all the animals was kept. And she kind of reached in back. I kind of saw what she was doing. And she brought out a bottle, small pint, of 4 Roses whiskey. Now, my family were teetotalers, mind you. Total teetotalers. And here was this thing of whiskey. So anyway, I said, what is that? She said, never mind. Do not tell your father. And it had belonged to one of the foremen. But we gave that little lamb a tiny bit of that whiskey. And I said, it was a miracle. Within moments, I kid you not, within moments, it was up on its feet. And it was baggy. It wanted milk. And so we gave it milk, and it lived. And so I had a name I wanted to call it, and Mom said, no, not 4 Roses. So I named her Soda Pop. And Soda Pop, I cared for her very carefully for years, and this is what we're taught to do. And she became the head of a herd of sheep, my own herd of sheep, and had lambs and so forth, and more, the herd grew. And that money from selling the lambs became the money I used for school, basically.
How and why did you choose to write the selections in your book?
Sure, that's a good question, because I think I often ask myself that. But what I wanted to do as I started writing, the first thing I ever decided might be a book or a part of a book was a relationship I had with a friend, a young woman in boarding school, and her name was Cecilia. And Cecilia and I bonded together as friends. I mean, we would do things together. She was always doing quirky things, incredibly quirky things. But when we graduated, we lost touch with each other, just no more. And then one day, 42 years later, she called me. She said she had found my number. This is while I was in Ohio. And she found my number and where I lived, and she called and said, "Hi, it's me." This kind of blew my mind. And so we talked and talked and talked. And every day from that point on until her death a couple of years ago, we spoke every day. Now, in speaking to her, sometimes I would be out on my balcony and have the newspaper, and we would joke about horoscopes. And we had such fun. But what really happened, she told me stories of her life, incidents that were absolutely delightful, where she got in trouble. And, for example, boarding school, she had got demerits, and her punishment was she had to take a basket and a dandelion digger and go out in the grounds and, pull out dandelions. And I said, "This is incredible. Here you are, a sophomore or whatever." But she told me these stories, and I said, "I've got to write them down." She said, No, you can't." And I said, "Yes, I will." I said, "See, this could become the book of Cecilia." And she says, "Oh, not really." I said, "Yeah, really." So that's what I ended up doing, was putting together those stories that she had told me first. And so it became kind of a book of Cecilia. It couldn't be one that stood by itself. And then I began to think, she said, "Well, why don't you put some other stories in there?" And then choosing those, sometimes it was difficult as to what I was going to put in. Was I going to put in something where I had a lot of frustration, a lot of perhaps anger, things where I felt I was hurt, or was it going to be all happy things and, fun and games, so to speak? And I knew it couldn't be, because part of this whole idea of writing was to find something within myself. Now, there were incidents that, with my students and trips we made and awards they won and that sort of thing. But the other type of selections were those that were very meaningful in a deep sort of way. In other words, they came from the heart and the gut at sometimes. And I had to feel I could talk about them, that I could write about them, that in writing it relieved and some of the fear I had held in my mind for years and years and years. And the writing helped do that. So as far as selecting ones, it was a matter of putting some together that were not so good in terms of happiness and contentment and that sort of thing, versus things that were not really so pleasant. So when a person reads the book, there's quite a difference in some of the selections. Some are almost fantasy, and some are of times when I was a youngster, and let's say we had a weak relationship with my stepmother, and so it was, I don't know if that helps give you an idea of how you go about, or how I went about putting things together. So there was the younger part of my life, kind of a middle space, and then it went on from there to various examples. So the last one, oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
Go ahead.
Oh, well, the last two selections in the book, or at least those that related to glimpses now I can see. One had to do with the Book of Cecilia, which I've mentioned, and the second one was Letters to Pipkin. And Pipkin was a kitty I brought from Ohio out here to Colorado when I retired. Lovely, lovely pewter gray kitty. And the name had been given to her by my students in a class. And I said I had this new kitty and couldn't figure out a name for her. I was going to call her Miss Muffet. And they said, oh, no. And they came up with Pipkin, which was a character in a Ray Bradbury story called The Halloween Tree. And the little children around Halloween were seeking Pipkin. They couldn't find him. And it was just, they called him Pip. And the whole story involves them seeing Halloween through various countries of, in the world with this old man. And at the end, they found him. He had had appendicitis, and he was now well. And so Pipkin had, became the savior of the day for all of them. And so somehow they liked that name and said, name your kitty Pipkin. So that selection was very difficult to read in a way or to write about. I had already written things. It's kind of a journal to the kitty. A friend of mine had lost her schnauzer, and she told me the thing that helped her was to write about the dog a little bit every day, and it helped her get a perspective and accept the death. Well, when Pipkin died after 20 years as my companion, I almost lost it. I thought, this is not good. What do you do when you have this pet, which is really like a person? We talk to each other, she, in a sort of strange little way. But she was just delightful and a companion. And I could tell her things about my life, and I felt she understood. But anyway, so I started writing letters to Pipkin when she passed away. And that became part of the book because she was so important in my life. And so every day, for a long time, I wrote her every day. And short, passages. I still do sometimes. Although I have another kitty now, Pipkin remains her own self. So I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but those were two of the longer pieces in the book. It ends with a few that are more like essays. They tell of things I know and knew about, creative stories or essays. And they're a little different because they don't fit into a particular category. So I called something about other things. And I think all of them are, I think they're interesting. One is a story of a little Mexican girl who comes with her family and crosses the border into the United States with green cards so they can work with Mr. Roberts, my father, in the potato fields. And they were meeting a friend of theirs, a cousin, and it's their trip from Mexico into southern Colorado. And I wrote that in one sitting. It was like, okay, here's an idea, and I called it I Am Maria. And this little girl tells the story of how they came and meeting Mr. Roberts, as they called my dad, and what he did for them. And it was just, what he planned to do for them and have the kids have an education. And so I like it. I still like it. And it was one of those sorts of stories I think people would like because it has something we can identify with right now with immigration, of course. Although this was certainly a different time. This was in the early 1950s. And the world certainly was very different then. But I wrote it just because I liked the little girl. And her father couldn't speak very good English, so she spoke for him. Well, that particular story I submitted to a group called Stories on Stage. And once a month, it was a theater production, and different professional actors would read stories that had been written, in that case, by members of the audience. It was like sitting back and having a bedtime story read to you. And that one was selected, and it was done by a young woman from New York City. And it was just the life. People loved it. And I think anyone reading it you can really see what she was going through. Another one was called Unspoken Thoughts, and it was about Eleanor Roosevelt and her relationship with Franklin after he died. She's going back. She's on the train back to Washington, and she talks about what happened, what he did, and her relationship with him. That was another one I wrote in one sitting. A lot of them I did that with. It was like, here was an idea, here was a time, here was a place, and the words came. Now, I don't know about many other authors, but that's the way I worked. Something happened, and I started to write about it. The thoughts were in my mind, words, and I began to put it down on paper. And it was like it evolved of its own self. I sort of knew how it was going to end, but I didn't know the ending. I know I didn't outline anything. So see, some of these things I did as a writer are kind of, they're a contrast to what a number of writers do say, the way they handle writing. I didn't. I knew somehow as I began to write, that was the beginning. Those were the first sentences.
Thank you again, Elizabeth Roberts.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. I'm glad for the opportunity to talk about the book.
And listeners, thank you as well for spending time with us here today. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend this time with us, and I appreciate it. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you to be your best self today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember, you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.